Chris. Sorry for taking so long to respond. Again, I wanted to get to be able to try to do this in under 10 minutes. So I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. So the first point I want to get back with you on is the idea of the mystery and the idea of whether Paul is writing to individuals or to groups. So I feel like it's a bit of a moot point because I agree that Paul's he's writing about groups, and I don't think it changes the meaning. I didn't use the term election specifically. I don't think Ephesians even uses the word election. So I don't really understand that point. It might be more of a cultural habit to argue that, not that you're of yours, but to argue that point because Calvinists do use the word election to mean things that pertain to an individual. However, I don't think it means that it doesn't pertain to an individual. So the question I have is, if Paul is writing about this mystery, and the mystery that he's referring to is being explained to this group, and the group is unified. Some factor unifies this group. They used to be Jews and Gentiles. Now they're unified in this ministry, in this mystery. In verse 6 here, you can see this mystery is that the Gentiles are fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. This would be confusing to the Jews and the Gentiles, right? So someone's been living a holy life all their life, and they have the same standing, and they look over at the Gentile next to them who was with a temple prostitute like 3 days earlier, and Paul's saying you guys have the same basis for your unity. You are fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. And so what is the basis? What is it that he's saying to groups? If he's talking to groups, what is the basis for there being one unified group? I think I'm not arguing whether he's talking to groups or not, but what is it that he's saying to groups? And he's talking about this ministry. The mystery was made known to me by revelation, as I have written briefly. Okay, so he's mentioned this before. If we scroll up to chapter 1, we can see that he mentioned that the reconciliation of Jews and Gentiles isn't the entirety of the mystery. It exemplifies it. Verse 8, verse 7, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace, which he lavished upon us in all wisdom and insight, making known to us the mystery of his will. What is his will? He set it forth in Christ as a plan for the fullness of time to do what? To unite all things in him, things in heaven and things on earth. So what is the basis of this reconciliation, this unification of both the church from Jews and Gentiles? But actually, how does God reconcile all things in heaven and on earth? And he touches on it here. There's nothing about those who live a holy life and those who don't live a holy life in here. He goes on to explain what that basis is. First of all, what was our condition prior? Right? Chapter 2. You, everybody, were dead in trespasses and sins, in what you once walked. You followed the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. Who are they? Among whom we all have once lived in the passions of our flesh. This is our spiritual condition, dead in trespasses and sin. Some aren't living a holy life. God's not looking to see whose heart is pure enough or attentive enough. Carrying out verse 3, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind. And we're by nature children of wrath. There's not good people, the ones who are obeying the law, who are living holy lives. We're by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. Everybody. Okay, so what is it that he's saying to groups? He's letting them know it was grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is referring to the whole package, grace through faith. This is not your doing. You didn't do anything. It is the gift of God. It's not a result of your deeds so that no one may boast. it seems apparent, and the reason is this, because we are his workmanship, and he did this beforehand so that we would be created in Christ Jesus for good works that God prepared beforehand for us to do. So it seems like if you were able to say, I don't know how you can remove boasting if you're able to say, well, it's also if you live a holy life, or you're able to live a holy enough life. That seems like a boast. If I say, well, the guy next to me didn't live a holy enough life, the guy next to me didn't have enough faith, commitment to the gospel, but I did. There's something, the difference there is between him and me. I was contributing something that he didn't contribute. I can boast. No, you can't boast. There's nothing to boast about. So I guess my question would be, yes, he's talking to groups. What is it that he's saying to groups? What is the basis of their unity and their equal standing in Christ? You also mentioned in the gospel various times people were shown making choices, and that's true, that people make choices. So the question is are those primary or secondary causes? There's something that causes the sun to rise, but ultimately God is what causes the sun to rise. And there's times when this is shown to us. Matthew 16. What do I want? Okay, Peter. Jesus asked Peter, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered him, good job, Peter, you figured this out. No, he didn't answer that. Peter didn't do anything. It was not flesh and blood that revealed this to him. It was his Father in heaven. And to say that, well, God revealed that to everybody is almost like reducing this to platitudes. That what Jesus is saying to a platitude. God revealed this to Peter. The examples, even the metaphors given in John 3 of the idea of being born again, that's an external, you don't do anything to be born again. Being born isn't something you contributed to. There's no synergy in that. Being born is something that happens to you. John 6. 35. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall not thirst. But I say to you that you have seen me, and yet you do not believe. Okay, that's secondary cause. Believing, those who believe, secondary cause. What's the primary cause? All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, secondary cause, I will never cast out. Eternal security. So it doesn't say anything about what you do in contributing to this. I look at, the example of, on top of these examples, the examples of Paul himself. Paul, how did God save Paul? Well, you could say, well, God knew Paul's heart. God knew what Paul would do in response to the gospel. But we know what Paul did in response to the gospel. He got a permit, he got permission to go hunt down Christians and kill them. That's what he was doing. That's what he was in the process of doing. It wasn't his free will being exercised when he was thrown off a horse and made blind and had to submit to those he was persecuting. He was selected for a specific purpose to share the gospel among the Gentiles. So I don't think the examples, yes, choices exist, but they're secondary to the primary cause of our salvation, primary source of our salvation, which is Christ.